Hello, welcome back to See The Counsellor, and welcome if this is your first time. So I did not plan to do a part 2 to this, but I have been doing so much research and I've been getting so many questions on the first video that I posted in February about how to become a counsellor. And since then, all your questions have made me research a bit more, and I found three different routes on how to become a counsellor in the UK. So hopefully the following advice will answer all the questions that people have had in the first video, which I'm going to link above if you want to watch that one first. So the first route is going to be for people who have no experience in counselling whatsoever. If you've come from a completely different career path or you've never done anything that remotely resembles counselling, then this would probably be the best route for you. The first thing to do would be to do an introduction to counselling skills or a foundation course in counselling skills. This is a very short course. It's about 8 to 12 weeks. You will just learn the basics of counselling, and then depending on that 8 to 12 weeks, you'll decide whether this is what you want and this is something you're ready to commit to, because every course after that is going to be at least 1 year. Step 2 would then be a level 2 certificate in counselling skills. It's about 30 weeks, so that's like an academic year, and then you would learn a bit more about counselling through that, but you wouldn't do placement and you wouldn't have any client hours. You would just be in the classroom and you would get assessed within your classroom. No exams, so that's a plus. And then you'd move on to a level 3 certificate in counselling skills, which would then involve a little bit more practice, a bit more in-depth understanding of counselling, and you still wouldn't be able to do placement while you're on this part. I would encourage you to do personal therapy simply because it would help you to understand the counselling a bit more and you can see it in action before you start your placement. And once again, no exams. The next step would be a level 4 diploma in therapeutic counselling. So after this, you would be registered, because during this course you would do 100 hours of placement, supervised client hours that is. You would be able to work in charities, healthcare and educational settings with 100 hours of placement. So route 1 would take about 4 years to complete if you have no experience in counselling whatsoever. Route 2 would be slightly different. It is the one that I spoke about in my first video, which is what I did, so I'm going to cut it short and just say, with this one, if you've already got a background in counselling or you've done one-to-one counselling work in some setting, if you've got a degree in a social science like psychology like I have, then you would be able to kind of skip level 2 and just jump straight to level 3, which is what I did. But obviously I think it's dependent on the college or the institution that you apply to. Some might expect you to still do a level 2 and then a level 3. I was lucky enough because my tutor said that it was fine that I had a psychology degree, so she let me onto the level 3. So your level 3 counselling skills certificate would be 1 year, no placement and no exams, but just assessments. And then you would be able to go on to a level 4 and do your 100 hours of supervised client hours, or you can jump straight to a master's like I did, which is 3 years. So the level 4 diploma is 2 years. So if you decide to do the level 4 diploma, that will take you 3 years. If you choose to go down the master's route, that will take you 4 years, because the level 3 is 1 year and then the master's is 3 years. So the third path or the third route would be to do a Bachelor of Science in Counselling and Psychotherapy, or counselling and psychology. There's different combinations, but essentially all the same thing, as long as it's accredited, of course, by the BPS. So because this is basically a normal undergraduate degree, you would spend 3 years doing this, or you can do 4 years with the placement year. I've seen on a lot of the university websites that the placement year might be an option for some people. If you want to do a placement year, you can. If you don't, you don't. But I've also spoken to a lot of people who are registered counsellors now, and some of them did do placement within their 3 years and some didn't. So that, I'm a bit confused. There's not very clear information on that, because on the syllabus of some universities you do seem to have like an option to do client hours or supervised client hours within your 3rd year. So a placement year might not be necessary. I would suggest emailing universities and asking them about the structure of the course, whether you need to do a placement year or not, if you get to do it in your 3rd year or not. That way you can decide. So with the counselling undergraduate degree, it might take 3 or 4 years depending on whether you do a placement year or not. So you can become registered as soon as you finish that degree. So here are a few things to take away from understanding the placement hours, and I've spent so much time researching this to give it to you guys straight and simple. So with the introduction to counselling, level 2 and level 3, there are no placements available for those years of education. You don't do placement. So level 4, you do your 100 hours of placement and you can become registered once you've done that. If you do a level 5, then I think you do some more placement, which obviously means that you're closer to accreditation. And if you do an undergraduate degree in counselling of some sort, you get 100 hours of placement minimum out of that, and then you can become registered. If you do a master's degree, you get 300 hours of supervised client hours. If you choose to do a PhD for 3 years, you finish with 450 placement hours, which means you are accredited automatically as soon as you finish. So those are the different levels, and I'm going to try and like create a table so you guys can see it and screenshot it and use that to kind of simplify the whole process, because for me it was so complicated to get my head around. So as far as I'm aware, as long as you've got a minimum of 100 supervised client hours, you can apply for some counselling jobs. Not all of them, but some of them. And 100 hours is what allows you to be qualified and registered. But then when you have 450 hours, then you can become accredited, as I talked about in my last video. So be aware that different jobs will require different levels of qualification and different placement hours. So some might say that we want a minimum of 100 client hours, but we need you to be accredited. If you're accredited, then you would have 450 client hours. So some of the jobs are a bit wishy-washy in their descriptions, but essentially the more client hours that you have, the more jobs that you're able to apply for, because your experience is valued a lot in counselling. So I've been doing a lot of research, and some of the things that I've seen across a lot of job descriptions for counsellors are things I'm just gonna mention now. A lot of things that I've seen come up are you have to be a fully accredited member of the BACP or the UKCP or the HCPC, and that usually means you've got 450 supervised client hours under your belt. Some jobs, the minimum I've seen is that you're qualified with the level 4 diploma. That's like the minimum that I've seen, and with like 100 hours. Some of them do specify the hours they want you to have under your belt, so try and acquire as much as you can. Another thing I've seen is, like I said, you need to have liability insurance. Some of the jobs expect you to have liability insurance. Some of them expect you to have experience with specific therapeutic models, whether it's for trauma, whether it's systemic or group sessions or anything like that. Some of them really do expect you to have like CBT training or IAPT training. And another thing that I've seen, if you're applying for a specific role, that they want you to have experience with that. So for example, if you're going to work in a school, then they expect you to have already had experience working with schools in a one-to-one setting. Or if you are applying to work with addiction or with children or with trauma, they expect you to have a background in that already. So just be wary of those things when you're applying for counselling jobs. So that brings us to the end of how to become a counsellor in the UK part 2. If this video helped you, please like, please share, and please leave a comment, and I will see you guys in the next video. Enjoy the bloopers. Is that if you're trying to apply for a specific, but it's best to be, but the more, if you do a PhD, you'll be complete, so with the level 2, or so with the introduction to counselling in level 2, you do have, so the third so you, so if you do the level 4, then that will take you 3, that will take because the level 3, but I was lucky enough my therapist, and then you would move to a level 4 diploma in therapeutic skills. A level 4 in, so you would now move to a level 4 in, so you would move to a level 4 in, so the next step would be a level 4 diploma in counselling, therapeutic counselling. You feel like it's needed, and if you do a master's, then you get 300 hours of placement across the 3 years of your which I think is probably a year's course. It might be 30. Yeah, you're qualified. You're qualified at diploma level, at the level 4 diploma. You're qualified at level 4 diploma, and you will just learn the basics. So the first step in this route would be to do a foundation, the first thing would be, the first thing, stop laughing, the first thing to do would be to do a foundation, but if you go down the master's route, that will take you, if you go down the master's route, that will take you 3 years. Or if you've got like a psychology degree or a counselling degree or something along those lines, so a degree